we are still going through the book from the founding of the city by Titus Livius or Livy. The book is often called The History of Rome. I'll take this opportunity to ask you to subscribe because that will help me reach a bigger audience. Now, I've said in the previous videos that Rome went and took by force girls from the neighboring nations, and they tricked these nations to come to a festival they organized, and then they attacked and took away their girls. And the other nation decided to come and punish Rome. And I've said that there are three nations that came to punish Rome, but they were defeated, and they were persuaded after that to become part of Rome. And there's one more that had not come, which was the biggest of them, the Sabines. And the Sabines were more organized. They understood strategy of war more, and they had taken some time to organize themselves or to plan how to come and attack Rome. And in fact, in the previous video, I talked about them using trickery. They approached a daughter of one of the people who were in charge of security of Rome and bribed her or promised to give her something, and she gave them the keys to the city. And they came in, and the Romans just woke up and they found the Sabines within the gates of the city. Now, when that happened, the Romans, of course, moved fast to try to defend themselves against the Sabines. The Sabines came with a huge army, and initially they were succeeding. They were beating the Romans. And so at some point, Livy tells us that even Romulus was kind of like running away from the battlefront because things were becoming really hot or intense. And so at some point, it was a big fight, and it only took the intervention of the women of Rome to prevent that war from going on. And we will never know who would have won the war if it had been allowed to go on. Maybe there's a high possibility, going by how Livy describes how things were going, that the Romans could have been defeated. And after being defeated, maybe the city of Rome would not have become the big empire we know today to be Rome. Maybe it would have just disappeared into the oblivion. Maybe it would have been a few mentions in history. But the women of Rome intervened, and by their intervention, they saved Rome. We can say that. Maybe still Rome could have survived, but going by how things were turning out, there was also a high chance that the Romans would have been defeated, and that could have been the end of Rome. But now, this is how the women of Rome intervened. Remember, the women who were in Rome at that moment, these were women who had been captured. At least the majority of them had been captured by Rome from the neighboring nations. And most of them came from the Sabines. The majority of them came from the Sabines. And now they are watching this war going on between the Romans and the Sabines, and it hits them. The Romans are their husbands, and the Sabines are their fathers and brothers. And they are looking at this situation. Whoever is killed or whoever loses, they will still lose. They either lose their husbands and fathers to their own kids, or they lose their brothers and fathers. So they decide, we're going to stop this war. So all of them come into the middle of the two armies. Livy tells us that they come they tear their clothes and undo their hair, and then they come into the middle of the battlefield. And this is what they tell both armies. They tell them, if you regret the relationship that unites you, if you regret the marriage tie, turn your anger against us. We are the cause of war, the cause of wounds, and even death to both our husbands and our parents. It will be better for us to perish than to live, lacking either you as widows or as orphans. So they tell both armies, we can't stand by and watch you fight, because the other side is our fathers, the other side is our husbands. So we wouldn't let this go on. And after they say they stood in the middle, both armies stopped, and everybody was quiet for a moment, and they were thinking about it. Of course, the Roman men, soldiers, loved these women because they were their wives and mothers to their kids. The Sabines were looking at these women, these were their daughters and their sisters. So at that moment, the war stopped. And in fact, the leaders, Livy tells us, the leaders came forward to make a truce. And it was not only just a truce that there was not going to be war between them. They ended up joining the two people into one people, and the Sabines became Romans at that point. And there was an agreement that the leadership of the new empire was going to be shared between the Sabines and the Romans, who were initially the Romans. But now the Sabines had become the Romans, and they were counted as one of the tribes of the Romans. And that's how the Sabines joined to become part of the Romans. And Livy tells us Through that action, the population of Rome doubled, meaning that there were as many Sabines as there were Romans. And when the Sabines came and joined the Romans, the population doubled.